Hello, everybody. Welcome back to COP 2.0, the podcast. I'm here. I haven't found a name for this. Eventually, we'll get a name for it, probably by interview 23. However, I'm Maria Papaioannoy, and with me right now is Clive Bates. He is the director of the Counterfactual. Is there a the?
That's correct. No, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. The Counterfactual. And if you are in this vaping world, you know that Clive is a no-nonsense kind of guy, states the facts, or the counterfactual facts, really as they are, kind of states them. And I think this is what so many people connect with you with, is that you're no nonsense.
I hope so. We can't afford to have nonsense. Millions, literally millions of lives are on the line, and we need to get down to the essence of the issues that we're dealing with here and be clear about them, be candid about them, make our approach, harm reduction, appealing, and try and win support from it politically. Try to, show that the counter arguments or the other approaches, the prohibitionist approaches, don't work, could never work. There's plenty of evidence that they are fundamentally flawed, and we have to make the case. And the best way to do that is with facts, but also with stories, which where consumers make a massive difference in my experience, and talk about the lived experience and why it actually does work.
Did you come into this space from tobacco control?
No, not directly. The reason I'm in this is I used to be the Director of Action on Smoking and Health in the UK. I then left that and worked as a civil servant. So I went off and I worked for Tony Blair in his strategy unit. I became the head of environmental regulation at the UK's main environment regulator. I worked for the UK, for the UN in Sudan, and I then became an all-purpose Sustainable Futures Director General in the Welsh Government. Then I came back to this.
Okay. That's a huge career.
Yeah, well.
It sounds very fancy.
It sounds fancy. Some would say it lacks focus. But yes, it's been very interesting. I've had a very interesting time. But this issue, which frankly, when I left the tobacco field in 2003, I genuinely hoped never to return. I thought, that's it. I've done my time in this. It's not something I want to work in forever. But coming back and finishing as a civil servant in sort of 2012, 2013, I find that there's this amazing thing going on. Vaping is taking off. It's the early days of vaping in many ways. And yet, in the UK, they're trying to ban it. They're trying to regulate it as a pharmaceutical and trying to ban it. And what really moved me was that this is before I got at all involved. There was a consultation, I think in 2011 or something like that, 2010, in which the pharmaceutical regulator said, let's regulate these as pharmaceuticals. All the health organizations were behind it. It would have taken all of these products off the market. They couldn't be classified as pharmaceuticals. They would never meet the testing requirements. So it was an attempt as early as 2011 to have a de facto ban. I thought, oh my God, I have to say something. I have to do something. This is totally the wrong approach. We've already seen what had happened with snus. We already knew that this sort of approach was possible. And yet the first instinctive response to this innovation was to try push for a ban. And from then on, I started kind of agitating in favor of tobacco harm reduction. And I thought that fight would be over by the mid-2010s as everybody came to their senses and stopped doing stupid things. Royal College of Physicians published good reports on it, and people started to sort of sober up a bit. And, it's not happened. It's gone the other way. The anti-harm reduction campaigners, the people who aren't in favor of safer nicotine products for reasons that are inexplicable, seem to be winning the day through misinformation, disinformation, misunderstanding of how nicotine works and why people use it. And it just feels like an endless struggle now, which finds its peak at these meetings of the Conference of the Parties, which is why I've dropped into Geneva.
Well, yes, because we're having the Conference of the People. The good cop.
The good cop is a side event, and it's very good. People say talk about these issues rationally. It's not like a gospel meeting where everybody's forced to believe or has the same kind of opinions.
We don't serve Kool-Aid.
There's no Kool-Aid, and no one's setting fire to themselves. So it's a kind of normal discussion about how you reconcile some of the the difficult aspects of harm reduction. But what it isn't is everybody in some sort of weird ideological conformity trying to pretend that there's no benefit in having low-risk nicotine products compared to high-risk nicotine products, which when you test that amongst sort of normal people, non-combatants in this debate, most people just think you're insane. If you say there's nothing can be done, there's over 1 billion smokers in the world, and there's no gain from having them switch from smoking to smoke-free products, which are 1 to 2 orders of magnitude less risky, 10 to 100 times less risky. People just think you're nuts. Why would you stop that? And you want to go to sort of nuts extreme. You've got the policy measure, which is favoured by WHO with absolutely no evidence at all that it works and plenty that it doesn't, that you should actually ban these new products, the vapes, the heated tobacco products, the pouches.
Yeah.
And it's like people, if you explain this to people in normal language, we've got these products that are far less harmful. People can use them instead of smoking, but actually the WHO wants to ban them. They're like, no, that can't be right. That there's something else must be going on. It mustn't be true.
Well, because there's such a blind faith in the people that say we're wrong and the who is right. There's a blind faith in them.
That's true, and it is interesting because you. I don't know about you, Maria, but I don't like the anti-vaxxers, and I don't like the health cranks and everything. And normally we rely on authorities like the WHO to sort of put them in the corner and what have you. In this case, though, the nutters are the respectable. I hate to use such colourful language, but it's a crazy thing to do. People like me, people like you, you see 1 billion people who smoke, many more starting every day, many more are going to continue to use nicotine. We can't wish away nicotine use. We can't wish away alcohol or caffeine or cannabis or opiate or, use. These are phenomena in society. What we can do is make them much less harmful. So you and I are here because we think the 1 billion people, plus many more in the future, who smoke could avoid a huge amount of human suffering if they use vapes or heated tobacco products or pouches or snus instead, whatever they like, as long as it's not setting fire to something and breathing the smoke into your lungs, it's going to be a lot less risky. For some reason, we have the most monumental political effort to stop that happening.
And they're mean. I have never been personally attacked from the other side. I have strong opinions. You have strong opinions. And you can the way they try and put us through the mud to discredit. I mean, I will tell you this. My choice of whether I had children or not was once put on display.
Really?
To devalue my position on vaping just because I haven't had children, which blows my mind away.
So for this COP, I have produced a survival guide for delegates, which has got all my analysis of all the stupid papers, and I've got an expert wall in which I've got 50 statements from genuine, independent, high-quality experts from all around the world. I put all of this together into a survival guide, start circulating it to delegates. It's a laborious business. You have to find their email address and everything. So the coalition of, this is about them being mean, the coalition of NGOs who is allowed in because they have the right ideological conformity, sent around an email to all their members and lots of delegates saying this isn't official information. You must disregard this external interference. You shouldn't be reading these things. It's not, it's not a. And I'm like, what are you doing? What do you think you are doing, instructing delegates who are government officials to shut themselves off from a significant source of information and analysis? Okay. What they want is a kind of exclusivity, which they get through the kind of bubble system that operates to exclude people like you and I from these meetings. But they really resent anyone coming in and puncturing that bubble and introducing a dissonant, reality-based perspective, because they're in there talking about extreme measures that have no real chance of ever working or probably ever being implemented. But that's what they're going to work to do. And they, I think, really hate it. And they really hate people like me who put that in front of delegates. You say, look, there's a different way of looking at this. And they try to imply, and they're always doing this with me, they try to imply it's some sort of tobacco industry influencing operation. But the public health arguments for it are absolutely crystal clear. I'll state it again. It is much better if people who are using nicotine use a low-risk product than a high-risk product. And it's not just a little bit lower risk. It's like a lot less risk in going from a smoking to a smoke-free product. For some reason, that proposition, which is all I'm trying to get across and shouldn't have to work this hard to do, for some reason, that proposition triggers these people into incredible panicky responses, which they then email to all and sundry, all that they can.
Oh my God. But I do know some of the delegates probably laughed when they got that second email.
I think somebody sent it to me.
Yeah, so someone laughed.
They obviously thought it was ridiculous. So yes.
I never knew about this world, like the COP world, until about a couple of years, probably during COVID is when I started understanding it a little bit more and understanding, because I had time to learn during COVID. We all did. I'm always disappointed in Health Canada.
Yeah.
I am so disappointed just because I do come from a country that is, one of the reasons it is a charter right is because of one of the people speaking here, Dr. Tyndall, who fought to have access to harm reduction. We learned from David Sweener about this, and Health Canada has done its best to hold that true. But and then they're at this and they don't say anything. It's so frustrating.
I agree with you. And there are delegations where, people do say things, but a lot don't. There's a lot. And the way I think that some delegations approach this is with what I call a red line philosophy. It's like, I'm not going to say anything unless it crosses a red line for me. I'm going to let this thing just run, and as long as I don't do anything, I don't have to do anything I don't want to do, and I'm not required. I'm not required to stop doing things. I'm required to stop doing things I want to do. I'm not going to do very much. That's the sort of red line philosophy. Then I think specifically in the case of Health Canada, there are really good, high-quality officials at Health Canada who understand this issue very well indeed. I'm sure of that. I'm speaking on their behalf, but they are not stupid people.
We have a good team.
They know what they're doing, and for them though, they've got to get a political cover for what they say at these meetings, an intergovernmental meeting, so they're speaking as a government, and generally any statement they would make would be signed off by
our Prime Minister,
the ministers, the relevant minister. I don't know who that is anymore.
Michelle, Margaret Michelle.
Okay, so what you'd be getting is a reflection, even though that minister isn't here, I suspect, I don't know if she is, but I would doubt it. Even though that minister is here, you'd be getting a reflection of what she once said about her government and about Canada in this forum, which may not be what the officials would say may not be what the officials would say if they were left to their own devices. But officials have to follow the policy of the government, and Canada, unfortunately, has taken a sort of turn for the worse on harm reduction. It was very strong at one point, but now not so. And the officials, they're there to do, they're there to help the government formulate its policy and present it to the outside world. I think the opposite is in a way true in New Zealand, where the officials have for years been promoting these endgame measures, reduced nicotine, retail bans, smoke-free generation. A new political party comes in and says, well, thank you very much. The previous government's policies are not to our liking. They've had all the applause, but they don't have to do any of the implementation. They're a more, I suppose, free markets, libertarian, right of centre government. We're not doing any of this. The officials are uncomfortable, but now have to say what the New Zealand government thinks. And they have to sort of speak for the New Zealand government in a way that they wouldn't necessarily if it was left to their own devices. Again, they may be changing their minds, I don't know, but they've been vested in the previous governments, and their delegation used to have people who promoted these policies very strongly.
Well, they did promote harm reduction in New Zealand today.
They did, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
But the officials who are doing it may not be that bought in, but the government definitely
has told them. Yeah, which is good to know, because that's really important, because sometimes I think of, why is so-and-so not saying anything? Because the people, you understand whatever country you advocate in, the people you're advocating to.
Yeah.
So it's a good understanding, and hopefully for everyone that's listening, is the policymakers or the policy writers and implementers aren't necessarily saying what they believe. They're speaking on behalf of the current government.
You can't assume. I mean, the job of a civil servant, I was one for many years, the job of a civil servant is to present the policy and help the government formulate its policy, taking the government's ministers as a political lead, and to present that policy as if it's sensible and coherent. So the UK delegation here is the government's very proud of its smoke or tobacco-free generation measure, this sort of birth date-based prohibition or something. So they are full of it. The minister wants to talk about it, wants to boast about it internationally. They're having a fringe meeting on it. They mentioned it in their opening statement. They are very, very excited about Agenda Item 4.1, where this will come up and they'll be able to say something. People will applaud and go, oh gosh, isn't Britain brilliant? So that's what they are trying to do. They are not they're not minded, and they don't want to hear from people like me anyway, criticisms of that measure, because I think it's a largely pointless distraction. I think the problem in people born before 2009, they are never going to get sick. Sorry, after 2009, they are never going to get sick with smoking-related disease. They're either never going to start smoking in the first place, or they're going to convert to some sort of smoke-free vapes or pouches or whatever well before they're old enough to get ill, which is sort of 2050, that kind of time. And that shows in the government's own figures about that. The tobacco-free generation measure doesn't yield any benefits to society until about 2050. It's a completely point, and that's only if you make insane assumptions about the effectiveness of age restrictions, which are broadly ineffective, or we wouldn't have anyone using smoking or vaping now because they're all banned under 18. And it also assumes that smoking and vaping continues pretty well as is without any changes over the next 100 years, which is essentially mad. So they're there, but that's what they're there to do, because the minister's proud of it and they think it's a unique British thing. They think it's great. They're getting loads of applause. The uncritical public health community in the UK is slapping their hands together like deranged seals, and kind of everybody thinks it's brilliant. It just isn't. As soon as you strip it down and do the analysis on it, do a no-nonsense take on it, it's a nothing burger. It's a distraction from dealing with the main problem, which is smoking amongst people who were born well before 2009, who are at imminent risk of serious diseases. You don't have to wait 50 years for a payback on helping them stop smoking, and for whom vaping, pouches, heated tobacco, snus, whatever, would be really good interventions. But at the same time that the government has sort of imagined falsely that it's doing something about smoking with the tobacco-free generation measure, it's also adopting anti-vaping measures. So the thing that could solve the real problem in the UK, vaping and etc., is being crushed down now because of a moral panic about youth vaping, which is completely misplaced. So they haven't got anything to brag about at all in reality, but they'll be in an audience where the analytical level of insight is so poor that no one will be critical. I mean, it's like...
They're afraid to be.
Well...
They get punished. They know, because they punish the criticals.
That's right. I mean, you know, they talk about... you're exactly right. There's a sort of disciplining thing that goes on in the meeting. So if you say anything that's off script, you get a dirty ashtray award, and you get sort of humiliated in front of, you know, when I've done this myself. I used to attend the FCTC back in the day, you know, around the turn of the millennium when it was being put together. We used to hand those out, you know, typically to the Americans for being awful. But it is a form of coercion and control and intimidation by very privileged NGOs who are admitted on the basis of a kind of ideological conformity. They're allowed into the room because they believe the same things that the Secretariat and the WHO believes. All the dissonant voices, all the viewpoint diversity is all locked out of the room. So no one at those meetings is going to hear from anyone like me who says, by the way, this tobacco-free generation is a waste of time and comes with all sorts of in-principle difficulties about regulating the behaviour of adults, because it's an adult measure. It only has any effect once people are over 18 or 21. So they're not going to hear that. And that's a shame, in my view, because we would get better policy out of the FCTC if there was more criticism and was more debate.
Well, you can't accept criticism if you're stupid. So I think most of the people there, oh, look at that, an ambulance, or listen to that. I just find that they have spent decades and decades of building stigmatization around smoking and then stigmatizing anyone that speaks out against what they think, that, you know, they've just become stupid.
Well,
I know that's a rough word.
I mean, stupid's not quite right, because it's done cleverly, nastily. There's a playbook in tobacco control of measures that are coercive, punitive, and stigmatizing. And the idea is that the pressure on the user will get them to change their behavior in a beneficial way. And I think the harm reduction approach offers a different approach. It's works through consent.
Meet them where they're at.
Meet them where they're at and let them do what they want to do, because what they want to do is to, on their own initiative and at their own expense, greatly reduce their own risk by changing the nature of their use of nicotine. Why on earth would you stop them? Why on earth would you say, no, that's something we don't want you to do? And the answer is it's countercultural. Their whole playbook is based on coercion, punishment, and stigma. It's not based on the free play of autonomous adults, well-informed consumers, innovative private sector companies interacting in a lightly regulated market in the consumer interest. That is not what they do. And the reason they don't do that is that there's no room in that for them. Unless there's a lot of harm, there's no point in them. So they have to have harm, they have to have public sector interventions and so on. Otherwise, they're out of a job.
Oh, I hope they do. I hope we end up giving them no job to do.
Well,
I mean, they are recreating their job. They're rebranding nicotine control.
Exactly. They've swiveled their gun turrets onto the new thing. I mean, I was involved in this. I mean, I hate smoking. My dad died from smoking-related disease. I lived in a smoky environment for the early years of my life. And I wouldn't be sad to see the back of it. I just think we have to find a subtle way of doing it, which is by consent rather than coercion, by treating people like adults, by letting them make informed choices. Anyone who switches from smoking to vaping, there's nothing to stop them going on to become abstinent. It's not a barrier to abstinence if they want to. You know, it's easier to quit vaping than it is to quit smoking anyway. So what have you lost if somebody reduces the health risk by 95 or more %? They're still using nicotine. Okay, you don't like that. They can still give up nicotine if they want to.
But that's none of your business.
It's none of your business.
None of your business. Get out of my life.
Yeah, it's just leave them alone. But if you want to encourage them or help them, fine. You know, if people do want to give up nicotine, that's fine. But let them make the first huge step of reducing the health risk, the cancer, the cardiovascular, the respiratory, the strokes, the endless litany of things that smoking does. Let them get that out of the equation. Because I think the danger is that people want all that harm from smoking to be part of the argument for quitting nicotine. And that's wrong. The argument for quitting nicotine should be based on quitting nicotine, not on quitting smoking.
100% agree with you. I wish we had like 3 hours for this podcast. You don't probably, because you talk about this all the time. But Clive, I want to say thank you for joining us here at Good Cop 2.0, the podcast. I can't wait. You're on again tomorrow, right? No? Today was your the one and only day. So you guys can catch everything that happened on day 1 at Good Cop 2.0. And we'll put the link in the podcast description. Okay. Thank you.
Have a pleasure, Maria. We should do this more often.
We should just chat more often. Thank you. Thanks for listening, guys. Bye.
Thank you.